Welcome to another edition of Futurartist Records Presents, and today we're going to talk a little theater. And I have with me a retired teacher, Mr. John Benton. Thanks, John, for coming up today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
You bet. So, retired teacher, tell us what's your background?
Well, it's a pretty varied background. My first work in theater experience there was in high school. I was in a church theatrical group at the Methodist Church in Fort Collins. It was ecumenical, so we had everybody from Catholics to Mormons in it.
Right.
That's ecumenical.
Yeah.
A lady named Jo Lindauer came in and ran that group and really benefited a lot of people. We did everything from little shows and productions around town, and produced also full-scale musicals at the church. So
cool.
That was the first. After that, I went to CSU, and I was majoring in music education. But interestingly, I ended up going to UNC for a couple of quarters, and when I went back to CSU, I started with the summer theater program. And they put me in as a theater major rather than a music major, which is fine. I like doing both.
So it was kind of by default?
It was kind of by default,
yeah.
But I wanted both anyway. I did finally end up getting both music and theater credits so that I could teach both.
Cool. I
was in good shape for that. But I've been in various plays here and there and directed some things around with community theaters, and it's just been really the major part of my life for a long time.
That's cool. And it's funny how that works out. Sometimes you end up, like you said, going for one thing and it ends up bumping into something else, which is great.
And now that I've retired, I've started doing a lot more music. So
nice.
It's really interesting.
Now, how is your perception of the arts affected by your experience as a teacher?
The arts are important. My feeling about the arts is that everyone needs to be involved. That's what makes us human. My perception of the arts, I see that they are undervalued many times when it comes down to counting nickels and allocating space, those sorts of things.
Right.
But I certainly see how much theater, especially music and the arts, benefit many, many students. It seems that people look at the sports and say, well, yeah, team player, they learn to be proud of themselves. Well, you can be proud of yourself doing theater, and there are many more people that can take advantage of it.
Right.
I mean, there's always something for almost anyone in theater, no matter their physical abilities or anything. There's backstage, in front of the stage.
Yeah.
So it's important.
You kind of started to answer the next question already, which is great, and that is, why is theater important? So when you're looking at theater in education, and you talked about sports and the way it can impact kids and how it's undervalued, so what's the importance of the education of theater?
Well, I'll share a story I think I shared with you before.
Yeah.
When I did my student teaching, it was at Poudre High School with Mr. Dwayne Wilsey, great guy. He was my cooperating teacher. And he shared a story with me about one of his students who had, the student was now a senior. He did not have an English credit, a speech credit that he needed because he kept failing the class. He just couldn't get up and talk. He just couldn't do it. He tried and just failed. And so Dwayne said, I cast him in our town. I cast him as the boy who delivers the paper in the morning to Dr. Webb, or Mr. Webb and Doc Gibbs. And he was so proud of that.
Right.
He took that class again, got A's. He had confidence.
Right.
He had a positive self-image. He felt he was valuable for something.
Right.
And it was just an incredible thing. and I've seen it happen over and over again, that a student gets on stage or even working backstage
Right.
and suddenly has a purpose or a goal, a drive, and feels, hey, I can do something too. And it's just, and it helps all the classes.
Right. Well, I think, something you said that is real important is when he was cast in that show, he wasn't given a lead part,
No.
or he was given something that they
He
knew
could do.
would, yes, and allowed him to get over that step, that barrier, and that fear that he had.
Absolutely.
And walk away surviving it,
Right.
which is important.
Well,
So important.
that is a difference between educational and semi-pro or collegiate theater. You cast for the students.
Right.
You
right.
may actually have someone that might play a part better, that has done many, many things, and you have someone else who is just about as good but really needs a boost.
Right.
And so many times you'll want to cast the student who is going to do a great job but who needs to do the
Right.
job.
Right. Now, do you think that that's different than when it comes to theater? Do you think that theater stands alone in the effect that it can have over, say, music or speech or sports, things like that? Or
I honestly think that it does stand apart from sports, because you put the best people on the best players on the field, and they don't put somebody out there because he's needs to go. In music, there are times when you definitely put people into groups or let them play a solo, even if they aren't the single best performer.
Right.
I think music comes closer, but with theater, I really feel that there are so many roles to fill on and off stage that there's something for everyone.
Sure. Now, you say on and off stage. When it comes to that, the world that the people see that's on stage is a completely different world than the world that exists behind stage.
They're different,
But they can't
but
exist
they
without each other.
They have to be connected.
Yes. Yeah.
You can't do one without the other.
Right.
I'm not going to go into a chorus of
Sure,
love and marriage.
sure.
No, it's really important. The people who are on stage performing, the talent, is one part of it, but there are so many other parts, from the playwright all the way down to the costumer, the lighting technician, the set designer, the construction people, the box office,
Right,
publicity.
right.
It's just a huge amount of things. I mean, there's so much more under the tip of that iceberg that the audience sees.
Right.
And if it isn't all put together and done correctly and done with an eye to the other parts of theater, it is not going to be a total success. It's not going to be as good as it can be. So I see that a lot. I mean, it's a very team sport type thing.
Yes, and that brings me to the question of what kind of crossover do you see between actors and technicians in a classroom setting in theater?
That's interesting. And I think not just classroom, but I think on stage. There are many places where there is a hierarchy somehow has been established. I'm an actor.
Right.
And you are, nothing. And the actors and the backstage people, technicians are just kind of at each other's throats, and nobody values anybody. It comes time to take the set down, and the actors are gone. I mean,
Right.
They're out of there. They aren't going to deal with that mess. Not in my theater. It didn't happen, and I'll say also not in. Another teacher I really, really respected, Chuck Albers, who was the music teacher at Skyline High School when I was there. he required his singers to help set up and break down. And you just can't have a production that feels right if people are not honoring each other.
Well, it creates a not just a respect of the other person's roles, but an appreciation for what it takes to get that done. I think
Absolutely.
from both sides.
You don't want the audience to know every little thing that you had to
Right.
do in order to put it on stage. Their job is to suspend their disbelief, watch what's happening, and experience it
Right.
without being distracted by things that are going wrong
Right.
or strange thoughts that you might occur because of something that happens.
Sure.
But it is everyone's job on stage. The biggest compliment you can give to a sound engineer is, "Oh, I didn't even know you were there."
Right.
You shouldn't notice what they're doing,
Right. It allows the magic to happen that way.
but it needs to be there,
Right.
like a string bass in a jazz band.
Right. Absolutely. So now all these parts are coming together, and you've got all this teamwork and stuff happening. How has technology affected that?
It's done many things. One, it's made it a lot easier to be a technician. You can do a lot of things you couldn't do, or you can do it with a lot less work. It also has tended to get the attention away from what theater really is. And theater is telling a story. It's not making things flash and jump and pop. You can do so much with effects that it tends to get out of hand in a lot of places. I've never been a huge fan of Feed Me, Seymour.
Oh, yes. The little Shop of Horrors.
Shop of
Yes,
Horrors.
yes,
I've never
yes.
been a big fan of that as a play because here's this mechanical thing up there. And it seems
So
to...
it relies on the effects rather than
yeah,
the
it
story.
really seems to do it. I mean, yes, there is a story, and it's
Absolutely.
much better than a lot of things for story. I know a story of when they produced The Music Man on Broadway. There's the scene where Harold Hill is out in the park, and he's feeling bad because of what's happened with him and the music teacher. So he's standing out there, and he's supposed to go over to the footbridge. Well, in this set, there was no footbridge, so they had a motorized footbridge. And the footbridge came from stage right and just rolled itself right out so he could stand on it. So instead of listening to Harold Hill talking about how he was feeling, everybody is looking at ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding.
So it takes away.
It takes everything away. It takes you totally out of the moment. You don't believe it anymore. It's just, hey, look, isn't that cool?
Yeah. Which brings me to another thing. When you're talking about technology, obviously you bring in social media, which has created something different. So what is the difference between theatrical and theater?
Theatrical gets your attention. Now, theatrical is I'm not sure it's a great word, actually, but because it does come from theater. But theatrical is just like, oh, there's so much drama. Well, no, it's angst, a lot of it.
Right.
Theatrical is, I saw a show that was theatrical, but I didn't feel it was theater. That was the stage production of Lion King. It was a pageant. They didn't really tell the whole story, I didn't feel, but we spent all our time watching these fantastic costumes on actors, being animals. And they actually came and paraded through part of the house, but I just felt like, well, okay, it's, a circus is theatrical.
Right.
It's not really theater. Theatrical is pro wrestling is theatrical. It's closer to theater than some things.
Right, right.
Now, theater, as the Greeks saw it, and as hopefully I see it, is to tell a story, to present something that is true, something that says something about us and the human condition. It may not be an actual happening, and yet it is true. And that's hard to explain sometimes. That,
Right.
if you tell a story of somebody getting out of a bad situation, even if that particular thing didn't happen, well-written story that has a good point will ring true, and we'll say, this is it. Look at
Gotcha,
all
yeah.
of Shakespeare's plays.
Right.
They're
Gotcha.
like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Having said all of that, stories, stage and backstage, the education part of it, what can be done? What do you see, not necessarily that we have to do, but something that could really help build up and expand interest in local theater, high school theater, and get people involved again in true theater and kind of away from the theatrical?
I'll be honest, I've seen a little of it, I think, happening. We need to get away from the reality TV, social media, this is the way it is type of mentality. We need to start respecting, again, truth, honesty. We need to care about each other. We need society to get on board with that. I think theater can help with that.
Right.
Now, how do you get them in the seats? You present something that intrigues them, something that they think that they might be interested in. You give them possibly things that they have seen before and would like to see again. Revivals do always really well, and I think that there's a big place for revivals. But new shows need to speak to today.
Right.
They need to bring up things in today's society and explore them without going for shock value or crudeness or exploitation. They need to tell a good story. I don't know how to explain that any better either.
Sure. No, I think that makes sense. And it gets so that they can have something they can relate to, but they're also escaping from.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, they can step out of where I am into a world where they should know they're safe. They should feel welcome. They shouldn't be offended to be there. And I think that all of that is important. I know that New York has a lot more going on Broadway, with people going and being able to survive at a time like in the 70s.
Right.
I didn't know if Broadway was going to stay. But it is fairly healthy now, and I think it is because of a lot of things that have been produced there.
Good. So, this was an enormous overview of what theater is, which was fantastic. Yeah. And I think, it'd be awesome to have you back and dial into some of the things we talked about and really dig into the details of them. Because I think something that has also been lost with the age of social media is you get a lot of instant access to things, but you don't really get backstory on it. You don't get the details about it. You're getting constant overviews of what's happening instantly. And I think it'd be interesting to see how people would respond to knowing the details of what goes into a show.
Well, theater is not an instant gratification for the people in it.
Right.
It's pretty quick for an audience, but it takes hours and hours of work and concentration and dedication and sometimes pain and sometimes angst.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
We open when?
Right. Oh, yeah, yeah. The pressure's on.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
We could go for forever.
Oh,
yeah, this is fantastic.
You and I have sometimes.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. Thanks again for coming up, John. This was fun.
Absolutely,
This was
Michael.
really fun.
It was great, and I
Yeah, absolutely.
appreciate the invite.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks again for watching, ladies and gentlemen. This was a great show. Make sure that you like this, you share it with your friends so they can see what's happening and get involved with the independent art scene. And make sure you subscribe so you can get updates on what we're going to have on here next. And so for Captain's Lounge Studios, T.G. Lewis Productions, and Futurartist Records, thanks for watching Futurartist Records Presents. It's the first time I've had to do over on an end.
Well,
I started stumbling and couldn't get back up.
You should have heard Peter Sagal on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Really?
When Michaela Schiffer was on, because I saw them do it, he ended up having to redo a lot of things.
Wow.
It was pretty crazy.